Hi, everyone. How are you doing? I'm back here, Denise Vitola with Linqia, as part of another episode of Under the Influence. It's a show that I host at Linqia to go under the hood of how brands influence consumers with impactful creator partnerships. What I can guarantee you is that you'll definitely walk away from these conversations with tangible lessons and ideas and how you can start or even up level your influencer marketing efforts. I'm excited to be here today to talk about one of my favorite topics, and probably yours as well, travel and hospitality. I mean, let's be real. Who doesn't love a good trip and a great hotel? I am a snob when it comes to that. But I don't know about you, but lately all of my travel recommendations, especially where to stay, are coming from creators. That's why today I have the very knowledgeable Bonnie Helena, and she's here to share how she uses influencers to get more heads in beds at the AIC hotel properties. Now, Bonnie's based in sunny Miami, and she is a dynamic and creative communications professional with a robust background in brand management, storytelling, and social media strategy. In her current role at the AIC Hotel Group, she establishes and implements public relations, social media, and she supports the overarching business strategies for the company. So she did a big job. And she's leading a 4-person team that spearheads the efforts for the all-inclusive Hard Rock Hotels in Mexico, Sign Me Up, Dominican Republic, Unico 20 degree, 87 degree, Hotel Riviera Maya, Nobu Hotel Los Cabos, and recently the Ava Resort in Cancun. So we're at the start of the busy travel season. First, you have holiday travel, and then people trying to escape the cold winter. With properties in Mexico and the Dominican Republic, she knows a thing or two about people escaping the cold in search of warm weather, and where to stay does matter. So Bonnie, let's get started and dive in. I told everybody a little bit about you and certainly gave them a sampling of the AIC Hotel Group. Can you just talk a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today and how long you've been working in the travel industry? And then again, a little bit more about AIC and the great properties you have.
Definitely. So, my name is Bonnie, as you mentioned. I am the Director of Public Relations here at AIC Hotel Group. I have been fortunate to be with the company for over 6 years now, coming up on 7 years. And I, as you mentioned, spearhead mainly the comm strategy for all of the properties in our portfolio in the North American market. So everything that's US and Canada facing, we handle directly from AIC Hotel Group. This honestly was my first job right off of grad school. Much like every young person out there, travel has always been a passion of mine. So my thesis was based on travel. So when I saw this job opportunity come up, I felt it was a perfect fit, and it's been incredible ever since. A little bit more on the company. So AIC Hotel Group, as I mentioned, we spearhead sales and marketing efforts for the hotels in our portfolio in the North American market. So we oversee everything from like a leisure sales strategy. We sell weddings out of here. We have a marketing division and, of course, the PR division. And under PR, we spearhead all of the influencer marketing efforts for the properties.
Yeah, so you ended on where exactly I want to start, right? So this whole conversation is about influencers and influence. And as I mentioned, for me personally, I look to creators and they're constantly posting things. I'll just put in like Instagram Mexico and see what creators are saying. So what has your experience been with creators, and how are you using them in your efforts?
Yeah, I mean, for us, influencer partnerships are an integral part of our strategy year after year. As I'm sure you've seen, the creator economy has evolved exponentially over the last, I want to say, 10 years. So for us, it's been a build, and kind of not, we've learned to navigate how to specifically work with creators for the travel industry. As you can imagine, travel is not an easy decision to make. You know, there's a lot of variables that involve, whether it's flexibility with time, figuring out when you can fit it into your schedule, and not to mention the cost. It's not just adding something to your cart and checking out in 3 minutes. It's a big investment. So we're very careful with the creators that we work with. We want to make sure that all of our collaborations are intentional and that we're aligning with the right people, the people that have the audience that is interested in learning about new destinations, learning about new hotels, interested in having an unconventional travel experience, which is where kind of like our Hard Rock brand comes in. People already have this preconceived notion of what Hard Rock is or what it should be. And in reality, when you place that brand in a resort format or a vacation format, it looks very different and it caters to a much wider audience than you would initially think. So essentially what we look for is our creators that can provide that and that can help with our storytelling.
So what do one of those creators look like? Just describe them a little bit and are you looking for awareness, conversion, or both?
Of course, conversions are the ultimate goal. At the end of the day, every business has a bottom line to meet. But on our end, because travel is so complex, we really focus our efforts on awareness. Because when people are searching for travel, like you mentioned earlier, you're searching for Mexico. You're not necessarily searching for a specific place to go to unless you already know about it. So keeping that in mind, we have to make sure that the creators we work with, when it's within the travel niche, because we also branch out into other niches, when it's within the travel niche, it's someone that really understands consumer behavior and knows how to push out their content in a way that it's searchable and can create a connection, whether it's with their existing audience or new audience members.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting, and I do want to unpack it a little bit because one of the biggest challenges for any company, any brand, is pairing up with the right partner and making sure that that creator is going to carry your messages and tell a story that's really going to pique the interest of your consumer, right? So in these creators, are you just working, because there's obviously creators that just talk about travel. And it's like, I traveled here and I traveled there and they're all over the place. But then there's like to Hard Rock. I think one of the perceptions is that you're going to go there and you're going to jam out and it's going to be loud music and all the things. But I happen to know that Hard Rock is actually a family destination in Mexico. So are you also looking at families, or are you just laser focused into travel specific creators?
No, our strategy is kind of spans different categories within travel. So yes, families are huge for us, particularly as you mentioned, all of our Hard Rock properties are family friendly, and we really do invest a great deal of resources into making sure that our family friendly programming is top notch. So we work with a good amount of family travel creators, particularly in the YouTube space, because that kind of helps tell more of a well-rounded story for those families that are looking for, let's say, I don't know, a gaming room or a water park, or things that are more kind of hidden, that aren't always necessarily at the forefront of the overarching marketing strategy. That's when we tap into those family creators. We also really like to find synergies within other niches. So for example, fashion. You wouldn't think that a travel company would necessarily go for a fashion creator, but fashion is a big component of travel. I mean, I am the first to say that anytime I have a trip coming up, the outfit planning begins the minute I hit book. So
Yeah.
That's an area that we've explored recently that has worked out pretty well for us. The same goes for beauty, wellness. There's a lot of connections that you can make to reach people through different avenues that aren't necessarily just laser focused on travel.
Yeah, I would imagine that. And in the work that we do at Linqia, we definitely do see that as well. I think it's about the experience, right? And that's the story you want to tell. It's people are traveling for so many different reasons. And I think it's tapping into each of those reasons really tells that kind of story that's going to resonate with a wider audience. So totally agree. And we are seeing something similar. Um, I would also say like so many people are traveling for, like I was saying, for so many different reasons. And I think I saw like over 115 million Americans travel during the winter holiday season. I'm one of them. I'm a winter baby, so like every January I'm going somewhere, and it's definitely somewhere warm. Now, is it important for you to tap into influencers like months before? Like, how do you handle that? Because I guess like now I'm going to ask you 13 questions in one, but it's so is every, let's start here. Is every creator going on a trip? And that's how you get your content and you send them to your destinations, or do you use them in other ways?
Yeah, for the most part, it's the creator going on a trip and collecting content. But there have been instances where there are creators that we work with multiple times that may already have a content archive that if we need something, we just engage them and say, hey, we have this coming up. We would love to work with you on XYZ. And is the content that you currently have available enough to make that happen? And it has worked out. A very recent example I can give you was last winter. Our e-commerce team wanted to push out an ad kind of alluding to what you just mentioned, like, hey, it's cold and snowy everywhere else. Book a trip to Mexico now. And we had them create some content in the snow in their hometown, and
Okay.
then cut and transition into their content at one of our hotels. I believe it was like them jumping into the pool or running into the ocean. So that kind of helped us tell the complete story. And
Yeah.
that came from that existing relationship of having already worked with those creators in the past.
Yeah, because I guess what I'm trying to unpack is I'm sure we're going to have other people listening to us, right? Because I guaranteed that they're going to walk away with some like, tools to use. And in travel, it can be costly to send creators on these trips and it can be time consuming. Excuse me. So if you're looking to push the winter season, when are you starting to do that?
Yeah, so our lead time is typically 90 days. We try to do a little bit before. We have an evergreen strategy, so there's always someone on site regardless of the season. But for the heavier, more specific campaigns, we try to do those about 3 months prior to make sure that all that content is already out there and available for people to search on socials once they're looking to plan a vacation.
Now, how do you use influencers to really motivate consumers into action? You said it's like showing different parts of the property. Do you use promotions? Do you tie discounts to influencers? What are some of the tactics you think that are sort of like differentiating you from other properties that people could go stay?
Yeah, for us, we have worked with like specials where if people book through a specific influencer, they get something that they may not get through booking via another avenue. Um, but we also really make sure that we have the influencer include those specific experiences, whether it's an excursion or a spa or a specialty dining option in their content that they're pushing out, to ensure that they're showcasing to their audience, hey, this is what's different at this property versus the 50 other in the same destination. This is why you should come here. Or like, this is why I love coming to Unico instead of a different adult only all inclusive. It's because of XYZ. A promo and a special add-on, they're always helpful to encourage bookings, but it always just ends up tying back to the authenticity in the content that the influencer is pushing. And that's when we see the best results.
Yeah. Do you work with any influencers on multiple executions? So like a longer term relationship, or do you just use them and then move on to a different group of influencers?
Yeah, our circle of those influencers that we work with on multiple instances is quite small just because we're really selective about who we want pushing our message out there. Um, but then, as you can imagine, we also have a ton of people reaching out to us on a daily basis. So some of those end up working out as well, but those are typically the ones that are the one-time collaborations.
Yeah, yeah. And do you put paid behind some of this content?
Yes, our e-commerce team has tested a few times adding budget to some of the influencer content, which has been great, particularly to drive traffic, just because it captures more attention than a graphic or a sales flyer. But again, because travel is so complex, conversions are not quite where we want them to be just yet.
Yeah, yeah. I will say at Linqia, we do a lot, like we talk a lot about making sure you're getting the most out of your influencer content. And we almost see it as a shame, honestly, if you're executing an organic program and you're not taking advantage of this content. And we've run some like testing for our clients where we tested against, like you were saying, display ads or, you know, a static image or something along those lines. And we always see the influencer content performing the best. So we share that with our clients, and we're constantly saying, okay, you have these assets. If you want to use them on e-commerce, if you want to use them on your your website, in your social media, you know, there's an opportunity to do that. So we definitely do encourage that. And it sounds like it's something that you're trying to do as well.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. People love to see real people.
Exactly.
Um, so it's definitely works much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what about one of the things I'm curious in the travel industry, because like, you know, I travel for work, I'm traveling for pleasure. And no matter where I'm at, like if I go to the gym, of course, I have to put up a picture of myself in the gym because I need to get credit for it. And I tag the hotel. Or, you know, I was recently on vacation at a beautiful resort and it was just so beautiful. I was like filming myself walking around, and then I sort of like gave a little synopsis of the place. No one's paying me to do that, but I just was delighted by the place and I did that. So, and I know I'm not the only one doing it because I see it on social media happening a lot. How do you, how do you capture all that UGC? Are you doing anything with it? And I mean, curious because, you know, I do sometimes have hotels liking what I've done, but are you leveraging that content?
Yeah, definitely. UGC is a huge component of our organic social strategy. So the team is constantly looking out for those type of posts, whether it's a story or an in-feed post of people creating beautiful content that honestly, it's probably not even their profession, but they're
Yeah.
doing it for fun or just as part of their vacation. And we do engage with those users, we'll repost their content. It gives us an opportunity also to connect more on a personal level as a brand with the consumer. So whether it's we can identify someone that's currently at the property and we'll send them a dessert amenity or a thank you note or what have you, here and there, just to show our appreciation for them also being an extra voice speaking about our brand.
Yeah, I've had hotels do that before too, when I've posted something and then I'll get back to my room and there was like a champagne bottle and thank you for your post. It's very sweet. It's very nice. And it does make you as a consumer feel very special.
Right.
And you go out and you keep sharing more.
Mhm.
So you talked about the rise of influencers and content creators, and we've seen that too. We've been around for over 12 years and they're going strong for a long time, but it just continues to, I think I read an article this morning of like 2025, is going to be the biggest year yet for influencer marketing. So, and I'm like, of course it is. So, but you touched on it. And since, let's call it, the rise of influencers, are you doing anything different with your PR strategies, your social media, or influencer? How are you building programs now? Are they the same, different? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for us, internally, it's been more of a shift, honestly, into our overall strategy for both PR and marketing. We've definitely made sure that we allocate a lot more resources into our influencer collaborations and strategy versus in the past, even versus 3 years ago, just because the results are a lot more immediate, and it gives us an opportunity, like you mentioned, to repurpose that content and continue to use it to push the sales strategies. So we see a lot of value in the influencer economy, the industry, and we make sure that we're pivoting as much as possible to make it a component of the overall goal for the company, versus before it was more of an add-on. Before it was like, yeah, you have your marketing strategy and you should also add on influencers, whereas now it's influencers are part of the strategy. It's no longer you should, maybe you shouldn't. It's you kind of have to.
Yeah, you're right. You have to.
Everyone.
I've even seen some companies and people talk about this where it used to be, like you said, the marketing strategy at the core, or the commercial. And now it's more the digital idea, the influencer at the center of it. And how do we take what we're building here and amplifying that in other marketing disciplines?
Right.
Does that happen with your company as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And across all markets too. For us, different markets behave differently. Of course, the US is kind of like the blueprint when it comes to influencer efforts. But we see it across company wide. Everyone has begun to center their strategy on how we can leverage creators to reach our goals or push the overall consumer efforts.
Yeah. Not surprised there. Is there an example, recent or not so recent, timing doesn't matter, but where you've done something with influencers that you'd like to share that you think was a really successful program for you?
Yeah, so there's a creator that we worked with on multiple occasions. Her name is Nicole Sunderland, and her content is very laser focused on travel, specifically luxury travel. But it's so interesting because there is no face to her account. Her account is very aspirational, which goes against everything the algorithm is preaching these days. They definitely want people first, but her content continues to do incredibly well. We've worked with her, I believe, 2 to 3 times across different brands, and that was a couple years ago. And to this day, people still ask her about our properties. I always see her answering questions and continuing to push our brands and hotels. And to me, that just goes to highlight the importance of not only working with good quality creators, but also establishing a relationship and ensuring that, yes, they are providing a service to you, but it has to be mutually beneficial, and it needs to work both ways in order for the collaboration to be successful. So creators like her are people that we make an effort to seek out. Doesn't necessarily have to be within the travel industry. We've seen that across F&B, mixology, fashion, as I mentioned. But the takeaway here is building relationships and making sure that whatever partnership you establish benefits the creator just as much as you'll get benefit from the creator.
I'm a big believer in repeat executions. And I think it's also important because if I'm seeing somebody's content and I see that they're using the same product over and over again, or they're continuing to drive a certain vehicle or vacation at the same destination, it really holds more value. But there is the point of view that, well, once you use that creator, they've already spoken to their community, and you should move on and work with different people. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I can see that perspective, but at the same time, you could do both at the same time. You can continue working with those creators that you have a relationship with, or that the partnership has gone incredibly well, while also seeking out other creators and trying to reach a wider audience through different partners. I don't see why it has to be either or. I think both can exist at the same time.
Yeah. Do you think that there's an opportunity in travel to lean into some of these trends that we see?
Trends as in?
As in, like, get ready with me, or recently, I guess this would work in travel, but where the wives were whispering into their husbands' phones to see if, like, the phone actually, so it was like,
Yes.
send me jewelry. And then, like, they were creating these funny TikTok videos, but, like,
Yeah.
you see those trends pop up, different challenges or things like that. And I guess I answered my own question, but
I think
what are you doing?
so. I think as long as it makes sense and it aligns with your brand, I don't see why not. Social media is a lot about trial and error. So why not? Give it a try. If it works, amazing. The results are going to be great. If it doesn't work, it's not detrimental. So I think so. As long as it makes sense, I would say yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know what? It just takes that one thing to spark and go viral. And it's like, playing the lottery. If you're not in it, you're not going to win it. So if you're
Right.
not, to your point, which is so valid and so great, Bonnie, is if you're not trying different things, the social media is the place to do it, because
Mhm.
it's not going to crumble your company in any way. And it's not $1 million investment. So if we're doing something, we can then, like, if it's doing great, awesome, we'll amplify it. We could do more things with it. And if it's not, then, the algorithm will, make sure it goes away, like, and nobody's paying attention to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think also it comes down to, and I grew up in the PR space, and I always say influencer is like the new PR. Whereas when I first started in PR, it's like no one really respected PR. And it was like, oh, we don't know how to measure it. What is an impression? So what you got in the New York Times? Like, what does that mean? Who's actually buying my product because you're in the New York Times? And I'm like everyone. But yeah, or like, what's the Today Show? And I'm like, come on, people. But I feel like those conversations I was having like 20 years ago about proving that PR is actually like driving conversion and things like that. Like, I feel like I'm now having the same conversations about influencer, that yes, these impressions, it turns to conversion. Like, and it all comes down to setting the goal, knowing what the goal is, and then, having the actual analytics and measurement to, achieve those goals. But in your industry and what you're doing, how do you look at measurement, and how do you get there to achieve those goals?
Yeah, I'm very lucky because thankfully our leadership team, while they may not completely understand influencer marketing, they see the value in it. So they're on board with a lot of the things we pitch them. But for us, our biggest measurement metric is engagement. We want to make sure that whoever we're working with has that captive audience, because then we'll know that we're falling on ears that want to listen, versus just working on a whim without making sure that the person has the audience or has the passion behind the content that they're making and it comes across as inauthentic. Um, that is just a waste of time, I feel like, on both ends, both the creator and our end. So we really try to focus on creators that have that engagement, have that potential to drive. As you mentioned, repeat collaborations are when we see results with conversions. Very rarely do we see results from a one-time effort. So making sure that that engagement is there, whether it's at the macro level or at the micro level. The larger creator is typically the lower the engagement, but there are creators that, although they are huge, they have their audience attention.
Yeah.
So that's something that's our number one for us.
So we're like weeks away from 2025. Are you, what do you have big plans in 2025? Like what are you thinking you're going to be planning for influencer in the next year?
There's a lot coming up. We're lucky that our company is expanding and growing. So we have quite a few big announcements that we leverage influencers for as well. We just recently did that in December, where we announced the expansion of one of our brands. And those influencers, again, that we had worked with before that loved their time at our hotel, we engaged and we had them help us push the announcement in tandem with PR, which went over really well. So we have a few more of those coming up. We have events as well that we leverage influencers for, more of like a come along type of ordeal.
Okay.
Some events that are focused on wellness, some focused on food and beverage. And those results are always great for us too. We find that more and more as time goes by, people are learning about these events and they look forward to them every year.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the biggest things that we have coming up in 2025.
Is there anything that you haven't done with influencer that you're like, I definitely want to try this, or even a different kind of influence or something?
Yeah, I think for us, going back to working with people multiple times, I'd be curious to see if we have like an official established ambassadorship program, how that would drive results for us. That's something that I'd be really interested in setting forth.
Yeah. I say try it and go for it. I'm a big advocate for ambassador programs. And one of the points I can make on it that it works is I used to work at an OTC company in consumer health. And when I got there, everyone was like, I was like, oh, we need to do influencer ambassadors, and they could talk about multiple products of ours because it's medicine cabinet, all the things. Oh, influencers, no, not ambassadors for OTC. Nobody believed it. It was so hugely successful having these ambassadors. And it was like, whether they had the products for their family or when people were visiting or whatever it was, but ambassadorships can go a long way. And I think that when we move into 2025, we're going to see more and more of that. And I think, Bonnie, the other thing that we're going to see more and more of are partnerships. So how do companies sort of execute these partnerships? Like, some of your favorite content or influencer creators, is there a special product at a resort or destination that is built in collab with this person? So let's say it's fashion. Do we at this certain resort have this great bikini or cover up that's brought to you by this person? So I think more of these relationships are going to, take speed.
I agree. Yeah, more and more we see these brands come together that never in a million years you would think that they would work well, and they do. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated collabs even with other companies, like how Elf worked with Liquid Death. And I was like, what is this? But I'm fascinated by it and I love it and I'm drawn to it. But then you have like Dunkin' Donuts working with Nikki D'Amelio on like, she just started talking about like, hey, I drink this coffee. I love this coffee. Okay, we're going to come up with one that's specific to you. I know Nestle just recently signed an influencer who's collabing on a different food item. It's Ripe in Beauty, but why can't it be for every industry? Why
Right.
can't
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think people are just afraid to try, but they should try.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I always say fail fast so you can, get
Right.
back on your feet
Yeah,
and it's not too much of a mistake. Yeah, I think people just get worried about getting fired. But
that's true.
yeah. So, I mean, like I said in the beginning, I love for people to walk away with tangible, ideas and tips and tools and tricks. And you're obviously a bit ahead of the game, especially in the travel industry, in working with content creators and in infusing it into your marketing tactics and doing all of that. Like, how did you get there? And is there any advice that you would have to anyone that's listening to this to actually, take away and start to convince their organization that influencer marketing is a thing, they should do it, and how they do it?
Yeah. How did I get here? Trial and error. So, I mean, it's what we've been saying this entire time. You won't know unless you try. There isn't really a recipe for content to blow up or content to be viral at all. It just happens by chance when you find your groove and you find the right people to work with. So I would say that's number one. Just try things until you find what works for you. And then, as far as convincing their executives to believe in influencer marketing, I mean, there's so much research out there and so many case studies that you can pull as examples to showcase how that can apply to whatever industry you work with or whatever company you work in. I'm a very research-based person. I love to look at numbers and data and seeing how things work or they don't work. So I would say that just take trial and error and make sure you're doing your due diligence as well in presenting a plan and a strategy that aligns with the goals of your organization.
Yeah, that's great advice, Bonnie. And you're doing so many things right. I'm super impressed with everything that you're doing and really appreciate you taking the time to come here and talk about it and share your insights and, just take the time to have this conversation. I'm grateful. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for having me. This was great. I love talking about all of these things. So it's been a great hour for me.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. So until our next Under the Influence today, that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone.